In the autumn of October 1942, within the bustling confines of General Motors' Inland Division in Dayton, Ohio, George Hyde, a German immigrant of 52 years, found himself confronted by a set of design specifications that appeared utterly insurmountable. The venerable Thompson submachine gun, a weapon that had become emblematic of American military might and an iconic symbol of its war effort, carried an exorbitant price tag of $200 per individual unit. This sum, when adjusted for contemporary economic value, exceeded $10,000, representing more than a quarter of a year's wages for an average American soldier. With the immense undertaking of deploying millions of combatants across both the European and Pacific theaters of war, the financial implications were stark and uncompromising. At such prohibitive costs, the United States simply lacked the economic capacity to adequately equip its burgeoning armed forces. Colonel Rene Studler had presented Hyde with a directive that, while unequivocally stated, was devastating in its demands: conceptualize and engineer a submachine gun capable of matching the combat efficacy of the Thompson, yet at a staggering 90% reduction in manufacturing expense. A mere 7-month window was allotted to Hyde for this monumental task. This compressed time frame was dictated by the impending Allied invasions of Sicily and Italy, operations that would necessitate vast quantities of firearms, which current production facilities were demonstrably failing to supply with sufficient rapidity. The urgency was palpable, a race against the calendar to arm the troops who would soon face the crucible of battle. Initially, Hyde's preliminary prototype exhibited considerable promise, offering a glimpse of a potential solution. However, this initial optimism quickly dissipated upon its formal unveiling at the prestigious Aberdeen Proving Ground. It bears an uncanny resemblance to something that might have accidentally detached from a Buick automobile production line, one particularly disdainful ordnance officer remarked with a sneer, his voice dripping with contempt. He continued, questioning the very essence of its design. Where is the artisanal skill? Where is the distinguished wooden furniture, the woodstock that signifies a proper firearm? The military command had indeed stipulated an imperative for affordability, yet it was clear they simultaneously harbored an expectation for a weapon that retained the aesthetic hallmarks of conventional firearms. What they ultimately received, however, would later be infamously dubbed the most aesthetically unappealing weapon ever conceived in American military history. Nevertheless, amidst the grueling, muddy battlefields of Italy and the unforgiving, frozen landscapes of Korea, frontline soldiers would come to grasp a profound and devastating reality concerning the intricate, often paradoxical relationship between a weapon's visual appeal and its fundamental utility for survival. Please stay with us and watch the end of the video. We will be grateful for your like and subscription. Please write a comment about where you are from and what you think about the video topic. The dawn of October 15, 1942, found George Hyde deeply engrossed in his work. His posture stooped over a drafting table, bathed in the cool, artificial glow of the fluorescent lights illuminating the engineering bay at General Motors' Inland Division in Dayton, Ohio. Despite his 52 years and a distinguished career spanning 2 decades in the intricate field of firearms design, the German-born immigrant felt wholly unprepared for the contents of the thick manila folder that Colonel Rene Studler had unceremoniously presented to him just 3 days prior. The detailed specifications contained within its pages seemed less like engineering directives and more like an abstract mathematical conundrum, meticulously disguised within the dense lexicon of military bureaucracy. It was a challenge that threatened to redefine the very boundaries of his professional expertise. The legendary Thompson M1928A1 submachine gun, a firearm whose very silhouette had become inextricably linked with American martial prowess, from the crime-ridden thoroughfares of Chicago to the sun-drenched, embattled shores of Guadalcanal, bore a unit cost that caused even the most seasoned Pentagon accountants to recoil in dismay, a formidable $200 per piece in 1939 currency. Hyde had meticulously performed the arithmetic numerous times, each instance hoping against hope that his graphite pencil had somehow erred in its computations. This sum translated to an astonishing $10,500 in contemporary purchasing power, a figure that eclipsed 4 months of foundational wages for a private first class in the armed services. Even the streamlined M1 Thompson, hastily expedited into mass production following the devastating attack on Pearl Harbor, still commanded a price of $70, a reduction that offered negligible relief when juxtaposed against the colossal logistical and financial demands of a global military conflict. The sheer volume of weapons needed rendered even the slightly cheaper model unsustainable. The formidable strategic imperative confronting the United States was the urgent necessity to arm an unprecedented multitude of millions of fighting men, preparing them for synchronized military endeavors across the vast expanses of both the European and Pacific theaters. At the staggering individual cost of $200 per weapon, merely furnishing 1 million soldiers would incur an expenditure of $200 million, an amount that represented nearly a tenth of the nation's entire defense budget. And that was before factoring in the colossal additional costs associated with ammunition procurement, troop training, and the intricate web of logistical support. The Treasury Department, acutely aware of the burgeoning financial strain, had unequivocally communicated its stance. The Thompson submachine gun, despite its iconic status, was effectively pricing itself beyond the reach and capacity of American military armories, becoming an unaffordable luxury in a total war. Colonel Studler's audacious assignment resonated persistently within Hyde's thoughts, manifesting as a direct affront to the very principles of engineering and economic feasibility, akin to defying the fundamental laws of physics, to conceive and develop a submachine gun capable of replicating the formidable performance characteristics of the Thompson, yet at an astonishing 90% reduction in its unit cost. The detailed specifications were rigorous. The new weapon mandated an entirely all-metal construction, chambered for the proven. 45 caliber ACP ammunition with a cyclic rate of fire not exceeding 500 rounds per minute, and crucially a 90% accuracy rating at a distance of 50 yards, which translated into a requirement for 9 out of every 10 projectiles to impact within a substantial 6x6-foot target zone. Perhaps the most pivotal and indeed revolutionary demand was that the firearm had to be producible utilizing standard automotive manufacturing processes, requiring only minimal precision machining. This particular stipulation elicited outright derision from conventional firearms manufacturers, while simultaneously instilling a palpable sense of unease among even the most innovative automotive engineers. Compounding the formidable technical specifications was a timeline that proved even more unforgiving: a mere 7 months. Hyde was granted precisely 30 weeks to meet this critical deadline, a time frame directly linked to the moment American forces would require enormous volumes of submachine guns for the imminent, meticulously planned invasions of Sicily and Italy. Intelligence briefings painted a stark picture, indicating that entrenched German and Italian defensive units were diligently fortifying positions, anticipating a protracted and brutal campaign characterized by intense, close-quarters combat. Every passing day that American industrial facilities struggled to manufacture sufficient quantities of economically viable submachine guns represented another perilous 24 hours, during which American GIs might be compelled to confront well-entrenched enemy fortifications, armed only with cost-prohibitive weapons that, due to their scarcity, existed more as entries in bureaucratic procurement ledgers than as tangible instruments in the hands of combat-ready soldiers. The human cost of slow production was a heavy burden on Hyde's shoulders. Hyde's initial strategic inclination was to harness the valuable, recent expertise his team had acquired in the realm of unconventional manufacturing methodologies. The General Motors Inland Division had in fact just successfully concluded one of the most daring and innovative production feats of the entire war effort: the fabrication of an astonishing 1 million single-shot Liberator pistols, destined for the clandestine use of European resistance fighters. These rudimentary yet undeniably functional firearms had been constructed almost entirely from stamped metal components, meticulously shaped using existing automotive press tools and skillfully joined through efficient spot welding techniques. The compelling logic was clear. If the division could effectively mass-produce pistols with the same industrial efficiency as automobile parts, then it stood to reason that these identical principles of streamlined, low-cost manufacturing could potentially be scaled and adapted to the production of submachine guns, offering a potential path to meeting the impossible demand. The inaugural prototype, officially designated the T-15, materialized from Hyde's meticulous drawing board as an utterly revolutionary departure from established norms of traditional weapon fabrication. In stark contrast to the Thompson, which boasted meticulously machined steel components and elegant polished walnut furniture, the T-15 was comprised predominantly of stamped and welded steel sheets, ingeniously fashioned into a package that was undeniably functional, yet possessed a distinctly utilitarian and unembellished aesthetic. A practical sliding wire stock could be swiftly telescoped, adjusting the weapon's overall length from a full 29, 8 inches down to a more compact 22, 8 inches. The weapon's receiver, in its blunt simplicity, bore a striking resemblance to 2 sections of automotive fenders, crudely but effectively welded together, a visual impression that was, in functional terms, precisely accurate. Initial evaluations conducted at General Motors' proprietary proving range yielded encouraging results, indicating significant potential for the nascent design. The T-15 demonstrated a commendable degree of firing accuracy, exhibited consistently reliable cycling of its action, and could be swiftly field stripped for essential cleaning and maintenance in less than half a minute. Crucially, preliminary cost projections indicated a manufacturing expenditure of less than $25 per individual unit, precisely achieving the ambitious 90% cost reduction that Colonel Studler had so emphatically stipulated. This confluence of positive outcomes allowed Hyde a fleeting yet profoundly significant moment of guarded optimism, as he meticulously prepared for the pivotal formal presentation at the esteemed Aberdeen Proving Ground, hoping his radical design would be met with understanding. The journey to Aberdeen in the crisp November air was not merely a physical traverse, but one laden with the immense symbolic burden of America's industrial prowess and its capacity for wartime innovation. Hyde acutely recognized that his revolutionary prototype transcended the simple metric of mere cost savings. It encapsulated a profound existential inquiry into the very essence of American military ethos. The underlying question was stark. Would the nation's armed forces wholeheartedly embrace a philosophy of radical, uncompromised efficiency, prioritizing function and affordability above all else, or would the entrenched forces of institutional conservatism prevail, insisting that its implements of war must adhere to a traditional aesthetic, irrespective of their practical battlefield efficacy? The definitive response to this crucial query manifested itself with chilling swiftness and uncompromising brutality. The ordnance officers at Aberdeen Proving Ground, upon inspecting the T-15, handled the innovative design with a degree of barely disguised contempt, their collective expressions visibly transitioning from an initial flicker of curiosity through a phase of evident disappointment, culminating in a posture of unequivocal and outright rejection. It bears an unsettling resemblance to an object that might have inadvertently detached itself from the production line of a Buick automobile factory, commented Major William Harrison, the discerning chief small arms evaluator at Aberdeen, his tone laced with thinly veiled derision. He continued his scathing assessment, posing rhetorical questions that underscored his disdain. Where is the meticulous craftsmanship? Where is the distinguished wooden stock and foregrip, the wood stock that signifies a proper firearm? This contraption, frankly, appears far more akin to a utilitarian implement found in a mechanic's garage than it does to an actual weapon of war. The institutional prejudice against an innovative design extended well beyond mere visual appeal. For a considerable duration, the prevailing ethos within American military culture had inextricably linked the perceived excellence of a weapon to the hallmarks of traditional artisanal skill: precisely machined steel components, meticulously fitted wooden furniture, and gleaming, hand-finished surfaces that conveyed a sense of painstaking craftsmanship. The distinctive silhouette of the Thompson submachine gun, characterized by its iconic drum magazine, and the Thompson Auto Ordnance Company's unwavering commitment to intricate detail, had become an indelible symbol woven into the very fabric of American military identity. Consequently, a significant cohort of veteran officers, particularly those who had carried Thompsons through the brutal trench warfare on the battlefields of France during the Great War, perceived Hyde's creation, fashioned from stamped metal, as nothing short of an affront to established military traditions and the esteemed legacy of their armaments. Hyde, the visionary designer, was compelled to witness months of dedicated labor summarily dismissed within minutes of a perfunctory, almost dismissive, handling. While the Army had explicitly articulated a requirement for cost-effective manufacturing, their subsequent reaction laid bare a profound inconsistency at the very core of military procurement practices. They unequivocally desired substantial reductions in expenditure, without, however, tolerating any perceived compromise in the aesthetic presentation of the equipment. Despite the T-15's operational capabilities fulfilling every specified technical criterion, its utilitarian appearance fundamentally violated unstated, yet deeply ingrained, preconceptions about the appropriate visual characteristics for American military armaments. The journey back to Dayton unfolded under the somber chill of a November night, a return made heavier by intelligence reports trickling in from North Africa. These dispatches detailed significant reliability issues plaguing the Thompson in the abrasive desert sands and the pervasive humidity of jungle environments. A bitter irony compounded Hyde's profound disappointment as he grappled with the realization that the very weapon lauded for its elegant design was already failing when its performance mattered most, while the Army's senior leadership remained stubbornly fixated on preserving its aesthetic legacy. Every single day that production lines grappled to meet the mandated quotas, for the Thompson translated into another day when American combat personnel might face critical shortages of close-quarters weaponry on the battlefield, potentially jeopardizing their lives. Stay with us and watch the end of the video. We will be grateful for your like and subscription. Please leave a comment about where you are from and what you think about the video topic. As the illuminated GM Inland Division facility emerged into view under the Dayton streetlights, Hyde found himself at a pivotal crossroads, confronted with a choice that would unequivocally define both his professional legacy and the future direction of American small arms doctrine. He faced two stark alternatives. Either he could undertake a significant redesign of his weapon to mollify the entrenched preferences of military traditionalists, or he could resolutely prioritize equipping American soldiers with the tools absolutely essential for their survival, irrespective of prevailing institutional tastes or biases. The Thompson's inherent beauty, paradoxically, was contributing to its operational demise as surely and effectively as enemy fire, and Hyde, in that moment, possessed the conceptual blueprints for its visually unappealing, yet demonstrably effective, replacement. Upon his return to the drafting table, Hyde was armed with a truly radical insight, one that would fundamentally reshape the established tenets of American small arms philosophy. The provocative notion that an unrefined or ugly appearance might, in fact, signify superior utility. While the outright rejection at Aberdeen had undoubtedly been a stinging setback, it had simultaneously brought into sharp focus a critical, underlying truth about military acquisition practices, a fundamental reality that Hyde's analytical engineering intellect was now perfectly poised to exploit. The entrenched aesthetic prejudices within the Army were, he realized, inadvertently blinding them to the undeniable merits of functional superiority. His strategic resolve became clear. If he could not engineer his weapon to conform to traditional visual standards, he would instead ensure its operational prowess was so overwhelmingly evident that its external appearance would become utterly irrelevant. Collaborating closely with Frederick Sampson, the esteemed chief engineer at General Motors and an undisputed master of large-scale automotive mass production, Hyde initiated a systematic deconstruction of every element the military conventionally deemed indispensable in the construction of a submachine gun. Sampson brought to the partnership 3 decades of invaluable practical expertise in transforming crude steel into robust and dependable automotive components, possessing a profound, intuitive understanding that true elegance in manufacturing resided in rigorously excising any component or process that did not directly contribute to the core function of the product. Where conventional firearms manufacturers perceived intricate craftsmanship and artisanal skill, Thompson acutely identified areas of unnecessary complexity and operational inefficiency. The fruit of their combined efforts was a novel prototype, officially designated T-20, which emerged as an even more profound departure from established military design paradigms. Hyde meticulously divested the weapon of all purely ornamental features, preserving exclusively those components that directly augmented its efficacy in combat scenarios. The resulting firearm, by conventional metrics, appeared unrefined, even rudimentary. However, it represented, in essence, a triumph of functional engineering, a design whose sole purpose was uncompromised performance, and it would soon earn the iconic moniker that forever encapsulated its utilitarian heritage, the grease gun, a nickname derived from its striking resemblance to a ubiquitous automotive maintenance tool. The innovative design of the receiver perfectly encapsulated Hyde's transformative approach to weapon construction. Instead of the Thompson's conventional manufacturing technique, which involved laboriously machining a solid block of steel, a process demanding highly skilled artisans and costly specialized machinery, the T-20 utilized two halves of pressed steel, metaphorically described as clamshells, which were then expertly welded together along their joining edges. Each half of the receiver could be rapidly stamped from sheet metal within mere seconds, leveraging readily available automotive press equipment. The welding process, refined through extensive use in automobile body fabrication, created connections of greater intrinsic strength than older, more conventional joining methods, while simultaneously eliminating countless hours traditionally spent on meticulous fitting and surface finishing. The stark financial contrast was undeniable. The entire receiver assembly for the T-20 cost a mere $2. $50 to produce, a dramatic reduction compared to the $15 required for the Thompson's machined equivalent. The stock of the T-20 stood as another compelling testament to the philosophy of prioritizing utility above aesthetic appeal. To draw a clear comparison, the Thompson employed an elaborately crafted walnut stock, necessitating aged timber, exact machining, and painstaking manual finishing. In contrast, the T-20's solution was a utilitarian telescoping wireframe design that could be compactly retracted from its extended length of 8 inches down to a mere 8 inches. This innovative design not only negated the requirement for costly raw materials, but also offered significantly enhanced portability. This feature was particularly advantageous for personnel such as tank crews and paratroopers, who required compact firearms for effective operation within restricted or cramped environments. The cost differential was staggering. The manufacturing expenditure for the T-20 stock was an incredibly low 30 cents per unit, in stark contrast to the $8 cost associated with the Thompson's wooden stocks. Perhaps Hyde's most contentious, yet ultimately ingenious contribution was the dust cover safety mechanism. This system elegantly supplanted the Thompson's intricate array of mechanical safeties with a straightforward, intuitive operation. Opening the cover enabled firing, while closing it engaged the safety. This mechanism offered dual benefits. It effectively shielded the weapon's internal components from debris and provided an absolutely reliable, idiot-proof method of operation, making accidental disengagement during high-stress combat situations virtually impossible. While conventional ordnance officials often perceived this design as an overly simplistic, even crude approach, Hyde possessed the profound insight to recognize that paramount combat efficacy unequivocally superseded mere mechanical complexity or perceived sophistication. The meticulously engineered bolt design of the T-20 provided profound evidence of Hyde's acute comprehension of the specific demands of infantry combat. The T-20's robust bolt operated at a cyclic rate of 450 rounds per minute, a notable contrast to the Thompson's rate of over 700 rounds per minute. Military purists initially viewed this reduced rate of fire as a clear indicator of inferior performance. However, Hyde's counter-argument was based on empirical data. He had assiduously analyzed after-action reports emanating from the battlefields of North Africa and the Pacific, which brought to light a pivotal operational reality. A slower cyclic rate, directly translated into more efficient ammunition utilization and significantly enhanced manageability during prolonged bursts of automatic fire. The critical observation was that American service personnel were inadvertently expending valuable Thompson ammunition at an unsustainable pace due to its excessively high cyclic rate, which rendered precise and accurate shooting exceedingly difficult in combat scenarios. The completely enclosed action stood as perhaps Hyde's most far-sighted and impactful design advancement. In stark opposition to the Thompson's open and exposed operating mechanism, the T-20's bolt and its associated springs were entirely encapsulated within the protective confines of the receiver. This crucial protective enclosure effectively prevented ingress by ubiquitous battlefield contaminants such as dirt, mud, abrasive sand, and pervasive moisture, elements that perpetually plagued infantry soldiers, thereby averting the common issue of weapon malfunctions and jams. This singular judicious design decision would ultimately prove to be a critical factor in ensuring the weapon's reliability and operational superiority across a diverse array of challenging environments, ranging from the rugged Italian mountain passes to the dense, humid battlegrounds of the Pacific jungles. Pacific jungle warfare. In December 1942, the rigorous evaluations conducted at Aberdeen Proving Ground on the T-20 prototype submachine gun yielded compelling performance data that unequivocally surpassed any subjective judgments based on its appearance. During meticulously controlled tests involving mud, specifically engineered to replicate the arduous conditions of infantry combat, the venerable Thompson submachine gun consistently experienced malfunctions after firing merely 50 rounds, necessitating immediate field maintenance to restore its operational capability. In stark contrast, the T-20 impressively discharged 200 rounds without a single interruption, its innovative enclosed action proving remarkably impervious to the very environmental challenges that rendered conventional weapon designs inoperable. Further testing in sandy environments unveiled even more pronounced disparities in performance. The Thompson, when subjected to simulated desert conditions, required thorough cleaning after every 100 rounds fired, a finding that precisely corroborated alarming field reports from the North African campaigns, where American military personnel grappled with the persistent issue of weapon unreliability in the unforgiving desert climate. Astonishingly, the T-20 continued to operate flawlessly, delivering 500 rounds without any maintenance whatsoever. Its elegantly simple blowback action and fully enclosed mechanism decisively demonstrated their superiority over the Thompson's more intricate, yet ultimately more vulnerable, design. The culmination of these trials provided a definitive testament to Hyde's ingenious engineering philosophy. Cold weather assessments delivered the ultimate validation of Hyde's design principles. When subjected to temperatures designed to mimic the brutal conditions of a European winter, the Thompson's intricate system of multiple springs and complex action began to falter, primarily due to the thickening of lubricating agents and the contraction of metal components. Conversely, the T20, with its significantly fewer moving parts and streamlined mechanism, maintained its reliable operational integrity. This presaged its eventual and pivotal success during the harrowing Battle of the Bulge, where its robust performance proved critical. The statistical evidence regarding its reliability was overwhelmingly convincing. Across the full spectrum of environmental conditions tested, the T20 achieved an extraordinary 99.7% function rate, a stark contrast to the Thompson's 86.3% under identical challenging circumstances. It became unequivocally clear that the aesthetically unappealing weapon was not merely more economical to produce, it was demonstrably more dependable when the lives of American soldiers hinged on the flawless operation of their firearms. Stay with us and watch the end of the video. We will be grateful for your like and subscription. Write a comment about where you are from and what you think about the video topic. On Christmas Eve of 1942, the Ordnance Department officially endorsed the adoption of Hyde's T20, designating it as the United States submachine gun, caliber 45 M3. The meticulous final cost analysis fully vindicated every aspect of Hyde's unconventional and groundbreaking approach. The base firearm cost a mere $18.36, with the bolt assembly adding an additional $2.58. This brought the total manufacturing cost to an astounding $20.94, representing less than half the price of even the simplified Thompson, all while exhibiting superior reliability across every conceivable performance metric. This pivotal recommendation transcended mere cost-saving measures. It signaled a profound paradigm shift within American military strategizing, moving away from a traditional emphasis on aesthetics and embracing a new era of functional pragmatism. Hyde's ugly gun had unequivocally proven that raw effectiveness, rather than elegant appearance, should be the paramount factor in weapon selection. The pressing question now was whether American soldiers would readily embrace a weapon that bore a striking resemblance to a common automotive tool, yet performed with the unparalleled reliability of what would become recognized as one of history's most dependable submachine guns. General Motors' Guide Lamp Division, situated in Anderson, Indiana, had dedicated the preceding decade to perfecting the intricate art of manufacturing automobile headlights. Their factory floor was a testament to industrial efficiency, humming with the precise and synchronized choreography of automotive mass production. By January 1943, that very same manufacturing facility was undergoing the most radical industrial metamorphosis in the company's storied history. As skilled engineers painstakingly retooled the extensive assembly lines to facilitate the production of instruments of war, this dramatic transition from the creation of illumination devices to the fabrication of armaments would serve as irrefutable proof that American manufacturing ingenuity possessed an astonishing capacity for rapid adaptation, particularly when the very survival of the nation hung precariously in the balance. The M3's innovative design heralded a manufacturing revolution, providing irrefutable validation for every principle that Frederick Sampson had meticulously acquired over 3 decades immersed in the automotive production sector. whereas the Thompson submachine gun necessitated 21 precisely machined parts, demanding the expertise of highly skilled craftsmen and the utilization of prohibitively expensive precision equipment. The M3 remarkably required only 3 machined components. Every other structural element could be efficiently stamped, pressed, welded, or formed using the existing automotive tools and established techniques readily available. The receiver, for instance, employed the identical spot welding methodologies commonly utilized in the construction of car bodies, thereby creating joints that were not only inherently stronger, but also far more consistent than those achieved through traditional gunsmithing practices. This innovative approach simultaneously eliminated countless hours of laborious hand-fitting and finishing, drastically streamlining the production process. The design of the magazine perfectly encapsulated the weapon's overarching manufacturing philosophy. Thompson magazines demanded meticulous machining, adherence to extremely precise tolerances, and skilled assembly, rendering each individual unit both expensive and time-consuming to produce. In stark contrast, the M3 magazine was ingeniously formed from basic sheet metal, using readily available press tools, with its precise dimensions dictated by the stamping dies themselves, rather than relying on the variable skill of individual craftsmen. The crucial feeding lips, responsible for guiding cartridges into the chamber, were ingeniously formed during the initial pressing operation, thereby eliminating the tedious hand filing that Thompson magazines invariably required. This revolutionary approach dramatically reduced manufacturing time per magazine from an arduous 45 minutes to a mere 3 minutes, a staggering improvement in efficiency. Even the weapon's sights embodied a truly revolutionary approach to mass production. Thompson sights necessitated intricate machining, careful adjustment, and individual zeroing during the assembly phase. The M3, however, utilized remarkably simple stamped metal sights that were drilled to their final specification during the initial test firing, allowing each weapon to be rapidly and accurately zeroed without the need for expensive individual fitting. The front sight consisted of a straightforward stamped post, while the rear sight was a basic stamped aperture, crude in appearance perhaps, but functionally superior to more elaborate designs that often required painstaking adjustment and frequent maintenance in the field. The burgeoning production statistics emanating from the Anderson facility defied every preconceived notion about conventional weapons manufacturing. Guide Lamp possessed the astonishing capability to produce 1,000 M3 submachine guns per day, a stark contrast to the mere 50 Thompsons that could be manufactured by traditional gun facilities within the same time frame. The setup time required to transition from headlight production to submachine gun manufacturing was an astonishingly brief 30 minutes, vividly demonstrating the unparalleled flexibility afforded by automotive-style tooling. Worker training time plummeted from a demanding 6 months for Thompson production to a mere 2 weeks for M3 assembly, largely because automotive workers already possessed a foundational understanding of stamping, welding, and assembly line techniques, enabling a rapid and efficient upskilling process. Material utilization represented yet another significant triumph of intelligent and efficient design. Each M3 required only 5 pounds of steel compared to a hefty 8. 5 pounds for a Thompson, a critically important consideration during a period when America was simultaneously engaged in the monumental task of constructing the world's largest Navy, Air Force, and mechanized army. This substantial reduction in material usage was not achieved through any compromise in structural integrity. Rather, it was the result of astute engineering that strategically eliminated redundant strength while meticulously preserving functional integrity. Comprehensive stress analysis conclusively demonstrated that the M3's stamped receiver was, in fact, inherently stronger than the Thompson's machined equivalent in critical load-bearing areas, all while weighing significantly less. The inaugural M3 submachine gun made its debut from the Anderson assembly line on May 7, 1943, marking a remarkable achievement precisely 7 months and 3 weeks after Hyde commenced his initial design brief. This weapon served as a profound testament to the formidable industrial might of the United States, extending far beyond the mere advantage of cost-effectiveness. Frederick Sampson, witnessing the initial firearm emerge from the production line, experienced a deep sense of professional gratification. He had demonstrably proved that innovative automotive manufacturing techniques could not only yield military hardware of superior quality, but could do so at a mere fraction of the expense associated with conventional, more laborious fabrication methods. Yet this groundbreaking revolution in industrial production was poised to collide head-on with the deeply ingrained, often rigid, traditions of military culture. When the first consignments of the M3 submachine guns arrived at various training installations during the summer of 1943, their reception was unequivocally frigid, met with profound disdain from both the rank-and-file soldiers and their commanding officers. These individuals had, over decades, internalized a fixed set of expectations and assumptions regarding the appearance and tactile qualities of authentic military weaponry. The stark visual and tactile contrast with the venerable Thompson submachine gun was jarring. Where service members anticipated the gleaming elegance of polished wood and precision-machined steel, they were instead presented with rudimentary stamped metal components and visible spot welds, which by traditional standards appeared undeniably crude. Staff Sergeant William Morrison, stationed at Fort Benning's esteemed infantry school, perfectly encapsulated the prevailing sentiment in his official training report, noting, "It feels cheap in your hands. Looks like something you'd find in a garage, not an armory. The boys are calling it the grease gun, and not as a compliment." This rather unflattering moniker, the grease gun, quickly became indelibly associated with the weapon, reflecting both its unadorned, utilitarian aesthetic and the pervasive skepticism it engendered among troops who instinctively equated genuine weapon quality with traditional craftsmanship and meticulous finishing. The higher echelons of the Army's command structure largely echoed their subordinates' aesthetic misgivings, yet they also harbored more profound institutional reservations concerning the replacement of an iconic, battle-proven weapon with what was perceived as a hastily manufactured, mass-produced substitute. Please stay with us and watch the end of the video. We will be grateful for your like and subscription. Please write a comment below about where you are from and what you think about the video topic. Colonel James Harrison, who served as the Chief of Small Arms Training at the Infantry School, articulated this widespread conviction in his detailed report to the War Department. He stated, "The M3 may function adequately, but it fails to inspire confidence in our soldiers. Military effectiveness depends not merely on mechanical function, but on the warrior's faith in his weapons. This stamped metal substitute undermines that crucial psychological element. His words underscored a critical concern that the intangible aspect of soldier morale and belief in their equipment was just as vital as the weapon's raw mechanical performance. The cascade of criticism extended beyond the superficial realm of mere appearance, delving into the performance characteristics that revealed fundamental divergences in design philosophy. The M3's cyclic rate of 450 rounds per minute was consistently lambasted as sluggish when juxtaposed with the Thompson's blistering rate of over 700 rounds per minute. This criticism persisted despite Hyde's deliberate engineering choice to prioritize enhanced controllability and more judicious ammunition conservation. Similarly, the minimalist wire stock was summarily dismissed as flimsy, notwithstanding its inherent advantages of being significantly lighter and more compact than its wooden counterparts. Even the deceptively simple safety mechanism was characterized as crude, despite its demonstrably superior reliability and intuitive operation compared to more intricate mechanical systems. Training officers frequently voiced grievances about the necessity for extensive remedial instruction, required to help soldiers overcome their initial deep-seated reluctance to trust the M3's unconventional design. Paradoxically, range reports consistently demonstrated that troops achieved greater accuracy with the M3, a direct consequence of its superior controllability. However, many attributed this improved precision to other extraneous factors, rather than acknowledging the weapon's inherent design advantages. It became increasingly clear that the psychological barrier erected by the M3's stark, unrefined appearance was proving a far more formidable obstacle to surmount than any of the complex technical challenges Hyde had ingeniously resolved through his advanced engineering. The institutional resistance reached its zenith when several high-ranking officers formally petitioned for the immediate resumption of Thompson's submachine gun production, arguing it was essential to uphold established American military standards. Their arguments meticulously focused on the profound psychological impact on soldier morale, the symbolic prestige associated with their weaponry, and the myriad intangible factors that collectively contributed to overall military effectiveness, extending far beyond mere mechanical functionality. The ugly gun, which had emerged as a pragmatic solution to America's pressing wartime production crisis, was now facing outright rejection by the very military establishment it was specifically engineered to serve. This created a profound crisis of confidence that threatened to derail the entire program, arriving at a precarious moment when American forces were preparing for the largest and most complex amphibious operations in military history. The M3's ultimate justification, however, materialized not within the controlled confines of training camps, but amidst the unforgiving crucible of actual combat. In this brutal environment, superficial aesthetic prejudices swiftly dissolved under the stark imperative of life-or-death functionality. By mid-1944, American forces were unequivocally discovering that Hyde's ugly gun possessed a unique array of qualities that no amount of traditional craftsmanship could ever replicate. Battlefield conditions, with their brutal clarity, ruthlessly distinguished between abstract theoretical performance and tangible, practical effectiveness. Tank crews emerged as the pioneering adopters of the M3's revolutionary design, their enthusiasm stemming from an intimate and often claustrophobic familiarity with the cramped fighting compartments, where every precious inch of space held critical importance. The Thompson's extended length of 32 inches, with its stock deployed, made maneuvering within the confines of Sherman and Stuart tanks a constant, exasperating struggle, particularly when crews were forced to engage enemy infantry at dangerously close range during intense urban fighting. In stark contrast, the M3's extended length of 88 inches offered crucial advantages in these confined spaces, while its ingenious ability to telescope to a mere 8 inches made both storage and rapid deployment significantly easier and more efficient. Staff Sergeant Robert Hayes, who commanded an M4 Sherman during the arduous Italian campaign, meticulously documented these practical differences in his after-action report from the intense fighting around Monte Battaglia. He vividly recounted, "You try swinging a Thompson around inside a tank turret when Jerry infantry gets close. The grease gun fits where the Tommy won't go. Had to engage German soldiers at point-blank range yesterday. The M3 let me get my weapon up and firing while my loader was still wrestling his Thompson into position." His testimony underscored the critical advantage of the M3's compact design in real-world combat scenarios. The considerable disparity in mass also proved to be an equally pivotal factor during extended operational periods. Weighing in at 2 pounds compared to the Thompson's more than 10 pounds, the M3 significantly alleviated operator fatigue during long patrols and protracted engagements. Paratroopers, who meticulously carried every single ounce of their equipment on their backs through hazardous combat jumps, quickly calculated that a 2-pound reduction per weapon, when multiplied across an entire unit, translated into substantial tactical advantages. The official equipment report from the 82nd Airborne Division following Operation Market Garden specifically noted that M3-equipped squads possessed the capacity to carry additional ammunition and vital medical supplies, a logistical feat that Thompson-equipped units simply could not manage. While some units faced insurmountable challenges, it was within the Pacific Theater that the M3 submachine gun received its most profound confirmation, showcasing the exceptional ingenuity of Hyde's engineering principles. The suffocating humidity and relentless moisture characteristic of New Guinea created an absolute nightmare for weapons maintenance, a predicament that units armed with the venerable Thompson found exceedingly difficult to manage. The Thompson's exposed operational mechanism necessitated meticulous daily cleaning to stave off the insidious creep of corrosion and the frustrating occurrence of jamming, a luxury scarcely afforded during prolonged jungle engagements where encounters with Japanese forces could erupt without the slightest forewarning. Marine Corporal Anthony Ritchie's gritty combat journal, chronicling his experiences on Bougainville, vividly encapsulated the harsh truth about firearm dependability in such tropical environments. His entry starkly noted, "Day 2, Thompson started jamming every few rounds. Humidity gets into everything out here. Picked up a grease gun from a wounded GI. The thing kept firing no matter what I threw at it. Went 3 weeks. 800 rounds. Never cleaned it once, never jammed, not even when I dropped it in a stream during that night patrol." This first-hand account underscored a critical divergence in weapon performance. Stay with us and watch the end of the video. We will be grateful for your like and subscription. Write a comment about where you are from and what you think about the video topic. The M3's enclosed action, initially dismissed by high-ranking Aberdeen Proving Ground officers as unsophisticated, proved to be a critically decisive feature in environments where conventional designs consistently faltered. The M3's essential components, its bolt and springs, remained entirely shielded from the pervasive moisture, fine grit, and various detritus that invariably infiltrated the Thompson's mechanisms, even despite diligent and careful maintenance efforts. Subsequent field reports emanating from Pacific operations consistently documented 3 reliability rates exceeding an impressive 95%, a stark contrast to Thompson rates, which frequently plummeted below 70% during extensive jungle combat. Further validation for the M3 emerged within the European theater during the exceptionally harsh winter of 1944-45. The monumental Battle of the Bulge subjected American armaments to extreme frigid temperatures, which starkly illuminated fundamental disparities in design philosophy between traditional and innovative approaches. Sub-zero conditions caused Thompson mechanisms to freeze solid, rendering these weapons utterly inoperable at precisely those critical junctures when German forces unleashed unexpected and devastating attacks against American positions. Private First Class Michael Sullivan, serving with the 2nd Infantry Division, eloquently chronicled the grim reality of winter combat in a heartfelt letter sent home. He wrote, December 23rd, temperature dropped to 15 degrees below zero. Jerry came at us before dawn. Johnson's Thompson froze solid. Couldn't even pull the bolt back. My grease gun kept chattering like it was summer in Georgia. That ugly gun saved our whole squad that morning. His words painted a vivid picture of the M3's unwavering performance against the fragility of other firearms. The M3's inherently simple blowback action, characterized by its remarkably fewer moving parts, consistently demonstrated its superior efficacy in such severe meteorological conditions. Where the Thompson's intricate mechanism demanded precise tolerances easily disrupted by the biting cold, the M3's robust construction and streamlined operational design continued to function with unwavering dependability. The substantial bolt, which critics had previously characterized as sluggish, paradoxically delivered exceptional performance in sub-zero environments by retaining sufficient kinetic energy to cycle the action reliably, even when lighter, more complex mechanisms completely failed. Intriguingly, German intelligence reports intercepted during the Ardennes offensive specifically designated M3-equipped American units as high-priority targets, a clear acknowledgment of the weapon's pronounced effectiveness in the brutal, close-quarters fighting of winter. Wehrmacht after-action reports candidly noted, American grease gun most dangerous in bunker-clearing operations, simple, reliable, always functional, even in extreme cold, when other weapons fail. This assessment from the enemy underscored the M3's formidable combat capabilities. The psychological transformation experienced by American troops mirrored the weapon's tactical vindication on the battlefield. Initial skepticism concerning the M3's utilitarian appearance gradually gave way to a grudging, yet profound respect, as soldiers discovered that its unglamorous exterior concealed genuinely superior battlefield performance. The informal moniker, grease gun, which began as a term of mockery, evolved into an affectionate designation, as troops learned to place their absolute trust in Hyde's truly revolutionary design philosophy. Technical Sergeant David Chen, a seasoned veteran who had endured both the Italian and French campaigns, perfectly encapsulated this evolving sentiment within his unit's historical account. Started calling it the grease gun as a joke, looked like something from a garage, not an armory. But after 6 months of combat, that garage tool brought more of us home than any pretty gun ever could. Function over form, that's what keeps you alive. His words resonated with the hard-won wisdom of experience. However, just as extensive field validation was unequivocally establishing the M3's combat supremacy, a new and unforeseen calamity threatened the program from an unexpected quarter. Quality control issues began to surface in early 1945, as the rapid expansion of production facilities inadvertently compromised the stringent manufacturing standards that had initially made the weapon so reliable. Some M3s were plagued by weak recoil springs, leading to persistent feeding problems, while others experienced instances of bolt breakage during sustained firing. Critics who had harbored opposition to the program from its inception eagerly seized upon these failures, presenting them as irrefutable vindication of their aesthetic and institutional prejudices. This burgeoning crisis gravely imperiled everything Hyde had painstakingly achieved through his superior engineering and undeniable battlefield validation. Directives were subsequently issued to cease M3 production and revert to the manufacturing of the Thompson. Despite the overwhelming and irrefutable combat evidence that unequivocally favored the newer design, Hyde's revolutionary weapon faced the very real prospect of cancellation. At the precise moment, its combat superiority became indisputable. This created a profound bureaucratic crisis, one that would ultimately determine whether American small arms doctrine would embrace progressive functional innovation or retreat into a conservative, traditional mindset that prioritized outward appearance above genuine operational effectiveness. The news that reached Hyde's Dayton office in February 1945 carried a devastating irony, one that perfectly encapsulated the entire M3 saga. The very last Thompson submachine gun had rolled off Savage Arms' production line, signaling the end of manufacturing for America's most iconic weapon. This cessation, however, was not due to obsolescence, but rather to economic impossibility. After producing an astonishing 1.5 million Thompsons, the beautiful gun had in essence priced itself out of existence, becoming a casualty of the very same cost pressures that had originally driven Hyde's groundbreaking design. The definitive demise of the Thompson consequently created an undeniable void, a vacuum that only the M3 was inherently capable of filling. Yet the persistent quality control issues continued to threaten the program, even as its necessity became absolutely paramount. Hyde and his colleague Frederick Sampson embarked upon a meticulously urgent endeavor to identify and systematically eliminate the production problems that critics were so actively exploiting to undermine the entire project. Their thorough investigation ultimately revealed that the swift and expansive proliferation of manufacturing facilities had regrettably compromised the precise steel specifications and critical spring tensions that were fundamental to the weapon's inherent reliability. The overarching objective was to imbue the firearm with an unwavering dependability, transforming it into an instrument of consistent and predictable operation in the hands of its users. This pursuit of robustness was paramount, aiming to eradicate any lingering doubts about its functional integrity and ensure its performance under duress, particularly in the most demanding combat environments. The definitive answer to the weapon's initial shortcomings was rooted firmly in the foundational engineering principles that had initially brought the M3 submachine gun into existence, a profound commitment to elegant simplicity as the most effective means of resolving intricate operational challenges. Significant enhancements in the metallurgical composition of critical components, specifically through more stringent steel specifications, successfully eradicated the troublesome issue of bolt fatigue and subsequent breakage that had previously jeopardized the weapon's structural integrity. Concurrently, meticulous adjustments to spring tension mechanisms were implemented, effectively resolving the intermittent feeding malfunctions that had regrettably afflicted various operational units, thereby bolstering the overall firing cycle reliability. The culminating outcome of these comprehensive refinements was the introduction of the M3A1 model in December 1944. This upgraded iteration meticulously tackled every substantiated grievance articulated by field personnel, all while assiduously preserving the inherent economic efficiency and manufacturing benefits that had rendered its widespread production feasible and economically viable on an unprecedented scale. Among the array of modifications, the most immediately discernible alteration involved the strategic replacement of the somewhat delicate and easily compromised cocking handle. This vulnerable element was ingeniously superseded by a straightforward, integrated finger hole directly within the bolt itself, thereby effectively eradicating the single component most susceptible to damage and operational impairment during the rigors of field deployment and routine handling. Furthermore, a significantly more robust and resilient rear sight was incorporated, a change that not only inherently enhanced the weapon's potential for precise targeting and improved accuracy, but also crucially retained its compatibility with existing, cost-effective automotive manufacturing methodologies, ensuring continued ease of production. Crucially, and perhaps most significantly, the implementation of stringent, overarching quality control protocols across the entire production pipeline served to systematically eliminate the previously inconsistent manufacturing standards. These inconsistent standards had, regrettably, led to sporadic reliability issues manifesting in certain production batches, undermining overall confidence in the weapon's performance. We invite you to stay with us and watch the end of the video. We will be grateful for your like and subscription. Please share a comment about where you are from and what you think about the video topic. As the global conflict drew to its conclusion, the empirical data unequivocally and overwhelmingly affirmed the profound wisdom and efficacy of Hyde's design philosophy. The sheer volume of M3 submachine guns produced ultimately totaled an impressive 694 units, a manufacturing feat that translated into an extraordinary cost saving exceeding $150 million, when directly contrasted with the expenditures associated with an equivalent volume of Thompson submachine gun production. Furthermore, the meticulously conducted final reliability assessments revealed an astonishing operational success rate of 99.7%, a figure that not only met but significantly surpassed even Hyde's most sanguine and ambitious forecasts. Consequently, the very weapon that had initially been disparaged and dismissed as rudimentary and functionally unsound had, through rigorous testing and widespread deployment, conclusively demonstrated itself to be more consistently dependable than any other submachine gun ever adopted into American military service. Nevertheless, the most profound and irrefutable affirmation of the M3's inherent merits emerged during the brutal crucible of the Korean War. In this devastating conflict, the unforgiving sub-zero climatic conditions proved to be a formidable adversary, rendering many conventional firearms inoperable and thereby starkly illuminating the intrinsic superiority of Hyde's fundamental design ethos. This particular conflict served as the definitive proving ground, offering a conclusive and harrowing examination of the long-standing debate concerning function versus aesthetic form that had persistently shadowed the weapon since its initial unveiling. Under the relentless assault of extreme weather, all superficial aesthetic considerations were ruthlessly stripped away, leaving exposed only the stark, unadorned truth of pure mechanical effectiveness and operational resilience. The tangible experience of Private Bob Shine, a soldier serving with the 2nd Infantry Division, vividly underscored the M3's exceptional performance in the depths of winter during the arduous retreat from Seoul in January 1951. His beleaguered unit found itself engaged in desperate combat against tenacious Chinese forces amidst profoundly sub-zero temperatures, a brutal environment where the uncompromised reliability of one's firearm transcended mere preference, transforming into an existential matter of life and death. Shine later recounted his initial disdain for the weapon, stating, "I detested that firearm when it was first issued to me at Fort Lewis. It possessed an appearance akin to scrap metal when contrasted with the elegant Thompson submachine guns brandished by characters in motion pictures." Yet his perspective dramatically shifted. However, when our unit engaged those Chinese emplacements at Wonju, my grease gun discharged every single round without fail. My comrade positioned beside me, armed with a Thompson, found his weapon jammed after merely 10 shots. That visually unappealing firearm, in stark truth, was instrumental in ensuring my survival and safe return. Post-engagement analyses conducted by the Chinese People's Volunteer Army, subsequently intercepted and scrutinized during their spring offensive, explicitly indicated a deliberate targeting strategy against American combatants observed to be wielding M3 submachine guns. This tactical directive stemmed from a clear recognition of the weapon's pronounced effectiveness within the confines of the intense close-quarters engagements that predominantly defined a significant portion of the Korean conflict. Furthermore, intelligence evaluations compiled by Communist forces specifically highlighted the M3's remarkable and consistent operational reliability, even under environmental conditions that rendered other types of small arms ineffective or prone to failure. Consequently, units equipped with the M3 were formally designated as high-priority threats during infantry assaults, underscoring the formidable reputation it had earned among enemy combatants. The profound shift in American military sentiment regarding the M3 mirrored precisely the weapon's irrefutable validation on the battlefields of Korea. What had initially manifested as widespread institutional derision and disparagement gradually transmuted into an unwavering professional esteem, particularly as commissioned officers who had previously voiced strong aesthetic criticisms of the M3's crude appearance came to fully appreciate and depend upon its undeniable efficacy in combat scenarios. By the year 1953, even the most staunchly traditional and conservative voices within the military establishment were compelled to concede that Hyde's colloquially termed ugly gun had definitively demonstrated a superior level of reliability compared to the more aesthetically pleasing, yet less dependable, Thompson submachine gun it had supplanted. The fundamental principle that Hyde had so meticulously forged through his exemplary engineering prowess ultimately ascended to the status of established doctrine, exerting a profound and enduring influence on American military procurement strategies for many subsequent decades. This core tenet articulated a clear hierarchy of values. Operational function unequivocally triumphs over superficial form. A product deemed good enough when engineered with precision and correctness consistently outperforms one striving for perfection but designed with fundamental flaws. Ultimately, it is demonstrable effectiveness rather than mere aesthetic elegance that must dictate the selection of weaponry. These groundbreaking concepts, which had seemed utterly revolutionary and iconoclastic when Hyde first articulated them, progressively solidified into widely accepted wisdom, subsequently guiding the development and acquisition processes for an extensive range of military hardware, from rudimentary small arms to immensely complex major weapon systems. George Hyde passed away in 1963, a testament to his enduring legacy, with his profoundly revolutionary design still actively serving within the American military apparatus. His creation had not only outlived the various critics who had prematurely dismissed its potential, but also surmounted the deep-seated aesthetic prejudices that had initially presented such formidable opposition to its widespread adoption. The M3 submachine gun continued its steadfast service through the harrowing conflicts of Korea, the protracted engagement in Vietnam, and indeed far beyond, steadily accumulating an unparalleled service record. This extensive operational history comprehensively vindicated every single facet of Hyde's pioneering design philosophy, simultaneously illustrating the inherent and lasting value of pragmatic engineering solutions when pitted against the ingrained resistance of institutional traditionalism. The profound legacy of this particular weapon transcended its immediate battlefield utility, ultimately encompassing a foundational paradigm shift in the prevailing American conceptualization of military effectiveness. The grease gun definitively demonstrated that genuine innovation frequently presents itself in an aesthetically unappealing guise to those whose perceptions are conditioned by conventional notions of beauty. It further illustrated that truly revolutionary solutions often challenge and outright violate established expectations and entrenched norms. Moreover, it unequivocally proved that authentic military effectiveness emanates from armaments that unfailingly perform their intended function precisely when all other systems falter, rather than from those weapons that merely project an impressive facade during meticulously staged peacetime demonstrations. The concluding narrative of the M3's operational history ultimately unveiled a profound and illuminating truth concerning both the American national character and its inherent capabilities. The very nation that had initially spurned Hyde's groundbreaking design, primarily due to its perceived crudeness and lack of refinement, ultimately came to embrace it wholeheartedly, driven by the undeniable evidence of its unwavering reliability. The deeply entrenched aesthetic biases that had, at one critical juncture, almost entirely scuttled the entire development program, eventually yielded to a pragmatic and undeniable recognition of its superior engineering and functional excellence. Thus, the ugly gun, which had once been summarily dismissed as an unworthy implement for American fighting personnel, ascended to become the most consistently dependable submachine gun within their entire armory. For the countless GIs who bore the M3 through the crucible of 3 distinct conflicts, the weapon's superficial appearance progressively faded into utter irrelevance when juxtaposed against its paramount and life-saving dependability. These soldiers learned, through harsh experience, that true beauty in military equipment is not derived from meticulously polished surfaces or the intricate nuances of traditional craftsmanship. Instead, it resides in the unwavering assurance of consistent and flawless function. Precisely when human lives are precariously suspended in the balance. The grease gun's inherently utilitarian and unadorned design thus epitomized American ingenuity at its absolute zenith. The remarkable capacity to systematically divest a creation of every non-essential embellishment, while scrupulously safeguarding and optimizing every single element that genuinely contributes to its core efficacy. Ultimately, George Hyde's derisively labeled "ugly gun" imparted a profound and enduring lesson to the American nation, that the most aesthetically perfect and desirable solution is invariably the one that unfailingly performs its task when all other alternatives have succumbed to failure. The seminal principle he painstakingly established through diligent engineering and rigorous battlefield validation ultimately became an indispensable cornerstone of American military doctrine, succinctly encapsulated as demonstrable effectiveness, rather than superficial appearance, is the sole determinant of true worth. The M3 grease gun, through its exemplary service, conclusively proved that on occasion the most profoundly revolutionary act lies in the creation of something so intrinsically simple and robust that it operates with flawless perfection, every single time precisely when the stakes are highest.